My name's Jerry Cooey, citizen activist. Took an interest in what my government was doing for me and to me about 20 years ago. What I have learned that over the last few years, it's more of the latter than the former. I got to take one comment in the beginning, and I hope I shock you into action. You can't speak at a public meeting in the state of Florida today if that board doesn't want you to do that. You can be handcuffed, you can be drug out of the building, you can be fined, and you can go to prison if you insist upon it. So I want to very quickly tell you what that's about. It happened in my neighboring county. I'm ashamed of the judges that were involved with this, but it occurred, the Maritime Park Board case, Pensacola, Escambia County. A federal judge by the name of Lacey Collier would not allow citizens to speak at a public meeting on a $100 million project. Taxpayer money. So a very brave lawyer, Sharon Barnett, and two citizens took them up on that challenge. Said, well, we'll go to court, we'll win this. And went before Judge Bell in Escambia County. He said, well, the Sunshine Law doesn't specifically say you can speak. So move along. Well, you think maybe one judge gets it wrong. Well, they took it to the first DCA. Charles Kahn, Weatherall, no. Doesn't say speak. I was in the room. I was shocked. If it weren't for that very mean-looking security guard that was standing there, I think I would have jumped the counter. It doesn't say speak, so you can't speak. Now, it says participate. What does participate mean? You do jumping jacks? Or I'm shocked at this. What I'm most shocked at, and some of our speakers have already talked about how the Supreme Court of the state of Florida has fought for years to protect the access of the citizens. This Supreme Court refused to listen to the case. All right? As it stands right now, our best hope is in the legislature. Okay, I deserve that. I deserve that. I hope in the First Amendment Foundation, and although Sharon Barnett maybe feels a little beat up right now, I think hopefully we're heading in the right direction. But you need to be aware of that. You don't have the right to speak. And one thing that I have read at many public meetings, actually about 6 times recently, is the First Amendment. You better believe I'm all in on the Sunshine Law, but the First Amendment in the state of Florida and for the United States of America says I have the right to peaceably assemble for redress of my grievances. Now, I guess Charles Kahn would say that redress doesn't mean I can speak there, but that'll be up to them. But I felt you need to know that. Now, let's talk about economic development. I came from the school of hard knocks. I learned about Barbara probably a little late in the process after a few stab wounds and pretty deep cuts. But each and every one of you have a wonderful group of people in your community that is there. They toot the horn for economic development. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not. But in my county, my organization, Team Santa Rosa, stood in the shoes of government. They were sanctioned by the elected Board of County Commissioners. They're under the sunshine. We started making records requests, and for those of you, and I was talking to a fellow earlier, don't be bashful. Try to be nice in the beginning. Nobody ever remembers when I was nice, but I don't take too kindly to know. But try to be nice. First thing you need to do is find out who is the custodian of records. It's very simple. Walk in there with a smile on your face and say, excuse me, could you tell me who's the custodian of records? They'll finally identify somebody. Pick a subject, whatever you want to know. Take a DVD with you so they can't unfairly charge you for copying something, and hand it to them and say, hey, I'd like to see the emails of that commissioner for the last 6 months. And let me tell you, you will learn some fun when you do that. They're going to fight you about it. They're going to give you a hard time about it. But when you finally do get it in your hands, sit down for a long read, and you're going to be shocked at what you find there. They've probably talked about you already. They've probably already called you a few names in there, but that's okay. But break that access point. But what we had was we started asking for the public records. And we get to run around, and well, rephrase it. Is that exactly what you're looking for? They played the slow down game, as they say. Is that what you wanted? Is that what you wanted? I had one records request. It was very simple. Now, my economic development agency, and this is the links that these folks will go to, they actually sent an email to the county attorney, and in that email it said, we really want to get off the county server because that sunshine law is causing us problems. Well, I got a copy of that email because I requested all the emails, right? So that was a nice one to find, you know. But when one of the requests that I made was when they left the county server and put their records on their server, I requested a 1.5 years worth of their emails. At which time I was said, for $795, we'll be happy to furnish that for you. And I said, okay, I really don't think so. You might want to try again. And we negotiated, which in the sunshine law is certainly, they're on the verge of violation there when they start playing games with the numbers and the time frame, because I legally had a right to that information. Well, we dropped it down to $350, and then I had to call Bill McCullum's office, and I finally got an interest over there, and they threatened them with arbitration, which I would be more than happy to take them up on arbitration. But finally got down to the point, would you just please come get them? Please. You know, so you have to understand, you have to be, you talk about patience. My hero Lucy says you have to be patient. You do have to be patient. There's no doubt about it. But you also have to stand your ground. But the economic development agencies that are developing within the state of Florida now is what you have to be very careful of. And as you just heard, where we allow someone else to do the work for us, where we subcontract the work to do for us, here's what they're doing to you now. Now my agency, and I'm proud of the fact I didn't get the ruling I wanted. I wanted somebody to go to prison, to be quite honest with you, because they did violate the law. Hands down, no doubt about it. But what I did get out of the state attorney's office is that even though they didn't mean to do anything wrong, they did violate the law. In my economic development agency, because they received their funding from the county, from the taxpayers, and because they stood in the shoes, they had to have open meetings and open records. So we finally beat that one down. It only took 6 years. So, but what they're doing now is by that ruling, when it came out, and I was kind of disappointed, Barbara was very happy. She said, Jerry, I'm going to take this stick and I'm going to go crack some heads with it. And I said, well, okay, I don't see how, but it did. It opened some eyes up. So what they're doing now is, you may have some folks that are involved in economic development in your county that stand in the shoes of government, but there's another agency. One in particular that I've had some brushes with. Some of you might have heard of them. It's Florida's Great Northwest. They're a big, circle-y, tornado kind of thing. Maybe they are sunshine, maybe they're not. I can tell you this, I've done enough research to find out that they own real estate, they own silver bullion, a few other things, and I would like to know where they get their money. Now they foolishly, accidentally I think, sent me 2 years worth of a checkbook, a check register that I had requested. And the News Herald, Panama City newspaper, helped me with that. And it was pretty enlightening to see where the money trails, but they slammed the door after that one. They claim, well, we get federal dollars. You know, we don't stand in the shoes. Yet they're working in 16 counties in the state of Florida doing stuff to educate so we have a better workforce. Carol said, remember all the agencies that get created? That's the stumbling blocks for you folks. That's just to slow you down. That's simply to slow you down in your quest for the truth. Don't fall for that stuff. Don't fall for it. Just be vigilant. Find the custodian of records. Lay with it. Don't let them abuse you, and call Barbara Peterson when you're in a real bind. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Jerry, the economic development thing is a running battle everywhere. What really gets me is when they say, we have to keep the offer we're making to this industry that's looking at us, we have to keep that secret so somebody else won't steal our idea. Who are they showing that to? They're showing that to a private industry that's shopping for the best deal they can find. Why do they think that their customer's not going to shop it around and tell the competitors what they're doing? That just drives me nuts. I have that beat over my head. Matt, refresh us here.
Okay, I'm going to stand too because I tend to talk with my hands and I don't want to smack any of my neighbors here. I'm Matt Doig. I'm a reporter / editor with the Sarasota Herald Tribune. Do a lot of investigative projects involving big databases of public records. It's interesting, a lot of the conversations have been about the privatization of public records. That's what I'm here to talk about. To me, I think this is one of the more dangerous trends in public records. You know, these days, a lot of things that you used to just walk into City Hall and kind of flip through a file, those things are now fed into servers and spreadsheets and all that. And as those things get bigger and complicated, government employees say, you know, we can't do this anymore. We can't manage all this. We need to hire out a company to manage our records. So things like fire department response times, police records, things that traditionally no questions asked are public, we are now being told, all right, you got to go talk to this private company who manages the records for us. About 18 months or so ago, when the red light traffic camera, I mean, anybody who lives in Florida has probably heard about the red light traffic cameras springing up all over the place. I said, you know what, I'm going to go get those records. And, you know, way back in the old days, like I said, you go to City Hall, maybe flip through a file. If, you know, if your sanity can take it, you do, you know, maybe a couple months worth. Maybe find a couple interesting things. But if you got a big database, you can get, you know, millions of records and look at big trends. So I called Collier County, who had the cameras up and running already. They said, you know what, you got to call the private company that holds our records. We don't know anything about it. We just kind of get a report from them every once in a while. So I said, all right, you know, I'll do that. And so they gave me the number. Unfortunately, that private company, not only were they a private company, but they were based in Scottsdale, Arizona. So, you know, normally if I make a public records request of a government agency and, you know, they give me some guff about, oh, you can't have that, you know, I'd get up on my soapbox, get indignant, and they're like, buddy, you got to give me that. It's the public records law. So I kind of sheepishly called this guy in Arizona, and I start trying to explain the public records, the Florida public records law to this guy, and he's like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, you know, he could care less about Florida's public records law. So something that should be a routine request of a Florida government agency, I'm up against some guy who's never heard of Barbara Peterson, so I can't make that correct. I'm like, no, I'm going to call Barbara. I don't care. So it took me months of negotiating. I had to deal with their lawyer. I had to call Collier back and kind of threaten them to threaten, you know, the Arizona outfit. And finally, they sent me some letter saying, look, you know, this is proprietary information, but we're going to be nice here. So they gave me this extremely limited, useless spreadsheet with, you know, basically no information in it. And I finally said, you know, the hell with it. The story's not even worth doing it at this point. So we're seeing that all the time, you know, all sorts of different records. So anyway, I'll cede the rest of my time to the rest of the panelists. Anybody has any questions or anything like that, but be on the lookout for it.
Hey, Matt, talk about, do y'all get regular bulk downloads of information from?
Yeah, we'll get like real estate records, kind of, all automatically downloaded into our system, and from other places. But like the fire response time, one of our other reporters wanted to do that, and we had to meet with them, and they had actually signed a contract with this private company saying that the records would stay secret. So, we told them, you have signed an illegal contract, and they kind of sheepishly admitted they had, and they had to rework the contract or anything. But my guess is that all over the state, as more and more of these records are being privatized, a private company will consider their layout of their records proprietary information, even though it's basically just a spreadsheet, so I don't know what they think they've invented. But so they keep that as a trade secret and don't want anybody else to see how they lay out the records. So they're really hesitant to give it up. Sometimes they'll say, oh, we'll do you a favor, we'll generate this little report. But that's like accepting, edited audio tapes from, the governor's meeting or something like that. And saying, yeah, we'll give you the tapes, but we're going to take out all the good stuff. No reporter would accept that, but that's what we're seeing more and more. Yes?
Just look, the electronic age, they just don't email you, like, if it's an easy request and they want to give it to you, do they?
Yeah, I couldn't believe when Lucy was talking about, Bob Graham in a day turning around, paper records. I mean, you'd think this should be the golden age of public records where, everything's digitized. They should be able to email it or send me a flash drive and have it immediately. But it has become, they're like, oh, we got to redact, and, they didn't design it to be redacted. Emails they need to go through and read them all by hand. I mean, they're using the electronic aspect as a reason to slow the request down instead of saying, geez, this is so easy these days. All we got to do is a keyword search and we can get you these records in 15 minutes. I mean, anybody who's ever used like Google Desktop or done any sort of kind of electronic search on their computer, you know how fast you can find an old file you might have saved on there. But for some reason, when it comes to public records, it's an additional problem for them.
My name is Michael Barfield. I'm a paralegal with a solo practitioner, Andrea Mogensen, in Sarasota, Florida. I wasn't yet born during the events that John described, but I'm always learning from him. And then, of course, whenever I need help, I call Carol's firm and her partner, Greg Thomas. They're a great resource. But we focus on providing legal services to citizens in particular who are seeking access to public records or access to governmental meetings. If you look through the index of the Sunshine Manual, most of the cases over the years have been brought by media organizations. Matt will probably tell you that their budget in the last few years doesn't allow them to hire attorneys to go after public records cases, and so the burden has now shifted to citizens to enforce their rights under the Sunshine Law and the Public Records Law. We got involved in a case a few years ago in the city of Venice where there were allegations of Sunshine Law violations and then public record violations to cover up their Sunshine Law violations. And before we knew it, we were swimming in emails. That's the ubiquity of emails these days, where someone can go create a Yahoo account or a Gmail account in a matter of 2 minutes, allows public officials to anonymously transact government business on their home computer. Or in the case of Venice with one council member, who made steps to go to the public library and create an account on the public library. Tracing these things, we really didn't know how to do to begin with. When we got all of the emails, we learned that there are software programs out there to allow us to sift through emails of public officials and or when the documents are produced in electronic format. And one of the great things that I think Barbara was the architect of in the definitional provisions of public records in Florida is that any any manner of which it is it's in digital form, you can request it in that format. You can require the agency and or the custodian to produce the record in electronic format. Well, most people use Microsoft Outlook, and Microsoft Outlook keeps things in what's called a PST file, which essentially is very easily exportable and would take only about 5 minutes, but for the agency's proclivity to say, well, we got to read this stuff and redact and charge you an arm and a leg. So getting access to the records does pose a problem for the average citizen who doesn't have the resources to go out and either buy the software to get that information and download it and review it, or to access the attorneys that are able to help them enforce their rights under the law. So we have been doing that in several cases, and predominantly the Venice case was where the government officials were using private email accounts, Gmail, Yahoo, etc., which has become the rage these days, to conduct their business. And on the eve of trial in that case, after 10 months of pretty fierce litigation and the public agency hiring about 9 attorneys to defend them, they decided to settle after we uncovered some emails that they had hidden, that the judge had repeatedly told them to turn over, and they offered multiple explanations of why these emails never had previously surfaced, but what killed them in that case was emails that said from the mayor to a citizen, actually, I can't talk to the vice mayor, but you can, and here's what you need to say to her. There were a couple of others saying, you know, we now have the votes, etc. And they weren't using their government accounts to conduct this business. They were using private accounts. So they saw the handwriting on the wall or on the email and decided to settle, at which point ultimately the judge entered some non-monetary sanctions against them, requiring training, annual reviews, etc. And then, of course, the ultimate penalty was $800,000 in attorney's fees, which sends a message, I think, to other public agencies and other public officials. State attorneys have not typically prosecuted cases criminally for records violations and sunshine law violations. So it has been up to the civil litigation, and the result in the Venice case after that attorney's fee award, the 3 council members that were involved in the violations were removed from office by the citizens themselves in the very next election. So it's a great tool to use, and in that case and in others, citizens do enjoy the rights. It's very difficult to get attorneys to prosecute these cases, but we're seeing more of that. More attorneys are becoming involved. I think the thing in Venice encouraged attorneys was an incentive to, okay, this is an area of law that perhaps we should start taking a look at. We also get calls frequently from reporters at our office that are seeking assistance in some ways to not litigate, but ways in which to uncover records because they're being hidden by governments in the electronic forms. BlackBerries, text messaging, pen messaging, things of that nature in the electronic realm. That is where it's shifted to, and it does require some expertise beyond just simply going in and asking for the records. So it's challenging, but it's rewarding when you do find the records and are holding the governmental officials accountable.
Thank you, Michael. It's not really true that electronic communication is hindering access to public records. if it weren't for emails, there wouldn't be a record.
Right.
And these people, you can't hide an email. It never goes away. But there have been more of those gotcha emails discovered in the last few years.
In our case, now, we look through 100,000 pages of emails, but the illegal trip out of the country on the developer's plane, the illegal trip to Washington DC in the developer's plane, the getting together of economic development heads said in an email, I've spoken to the 3 commissioners, they're good to go on the purchase of your property. Well, here she was polling sitting county commissioners behind closed doors. Emails, let me tell you something. Go get the emails. Go get them, take a DVD down there with a smile on your face and say, those 5 county commissioners of economic development and the planning and zoning, the head of planning and zoning, I want the last year's worth of emails, and I've got 6 discs for you. Please separate them. We had 1 commissioner in 6 months that had 42,000 emails. 6 months.
By the way, one comment I wanted to follow up on. As John pointed out, emails don't go away. Much to the chagrin of the council members in Venice, they told the judge, well, I deleted those emails. I don't have them anymore. The judge said, well, we'll help you with that. He ordered the sheriff to seize their home computers, and he did. And they were put in evidence until we had a forensic expert come in.
Started what we then called Sunshine Sunday in an attempt to bring more public awareness of the importance of the public's right to oversee its government through application of our public records law and our open meetings law. So we started this in 2002. It was a huge success. We had 90-some% of the newspapers in Florida participating. We had a number of broadcast stations. We had Carl Hyacin did a PSA for us. It was just fabulous. And it was such a success that the American Society of Newspaper Editors picked up the project in 2005, and we went from Sunshine Sunday to Sunshine Week. And now it is celebrated around March 16th. You wouldn't know this, but today is actually National Freedom of Information Day.